for me, this was a no-brainer response to what was absolutely essential in our community. And like many of you, excuse me, I had done research on guaranteed income. I watched Mayor Tubbs very closely when he launched the seed pilot a couple years prior, and the empirical data about the efficacy of guaranteed income has existed for decades, and this was an opportunity for us to really add to the body of work that had been done across the nation, and also to obviously respond to our communities immediately in real time. And so we set out to raise about $8 million and provide 600 families with direct relief. Actually, it was 800 families or individuals, and we settled on about 675 families of two or more. Two or more. And so our goal was to provide them with direct relief ranging from $600 a month to $1,000 a month. And we focused on the segments of the population that usually wouldn't be that wouldn't qualify for relief. So our undocumented community, as well as our formerly incarcerated and returning to society population, as well as just the working poor, working families that usually are just beneath the poverty line or just above in some cases. And we found that the program has been extremely effective. We've even had instances where Compton residents, they recognize that there may have been other families that had greater need, and they declined their program so that other residents could take advantage. And so we also set out to create a benefits portal, which provides direct access to not only vital resources, tools, training, financial literacy training, mental health services, but also our recipients can decide how they want to receive their cash payments electronically or for pickup. But we really wanted to test the mode that was most effective for our community, and then also to ensure that they were able to develop better financial practices over time. And so we started MLK weekend, and we were able to enroll. Actually started communication about the program months earlier to really just build trust within the community, and we were able to see the results of that with a rapid sign up. People were able to get enrolled in the program very quickly, and we've been going strong ever since.
Absolutely. And Mayor Brown, I just want to don't want to pry, but you tell this amazing story about sort of your mother and growing up that really helped sort of, I think, crystallize and illustrate how something as small as $500. I see Yesenia in the chat has sort of a similar story. So if you don't mind, if you could just share that story, 'cause I think that really encapsulates and really puts a bow on all your incredible leadership in terms of leading on economic security in the city of Compton.
Absolutely. I was raised by a single mother that decided to work very hard to support my brother and I. I have a twin brother, so we needed everything at the same time. It was just double the fun. And we were many times just without our basic necessities. We've had instances where if there was an unplanned emergency, my mother had to decide whether or not she was going to get her car fixed so she could go to work and take care of us, or in terms perhaps pay utility bills. So there are many times in my childhood where our lights were turned off or our gas. And I recognized firsthand what a direct guaranteed income payment, even of $200 per month, would have been monumental for my family. Because my mother was very a strong woman, she decided to work. We didn't get government assistance. And so we were literally like right above the poverty line. And we didn't qualify for free lunch programs, which I'm so happy that California now approved. Just universal breakfast and lunch for families. That's human. That's what we should be doing. So congratulations to Governor Newsom and his team. But that was something that would have been monumental as well. So I recognize firsthand that number one, providing direct cash does not disincentivize people to work. It actually will secures families and enables people to make decisions about maybe taking their kid to the library or their aquarium, or maybe allowing their children to actually participate in extracurricular activities, which I wasn't able to participate in. Only one of us could either be in a sports program. And so I elected to have my brother participate because I was more concerned about his safety and being and not being susceptible to gangs. And that's something that I was thinking about as a kid. And so those are things that children shouldn't have to think about. And so guaranteed income, the work has proven that it enables families to be able to just be whole and to make just the best decisions for their families, to spend more time with one another, to decrease stress. My mother was constantly under stress, like I'm sure Mayor Tubbs has shared. And I would feel it. I would feel the tension, and I would try to do everything that I could to not add to that. And I would be thinking about how she felt all the time. And that's just something that kids shouldn't have to deal with. And so I just want to underscore that. Thank you for giving me a chance to share.
No, thank you, Mayor Brown. Because I think oftentimes people forget that mayors are people, and that a lot of the policy we do is informed by. I know Mayor Garcia tells a wonderful story of his late mother, the work she did as a nurse, particularly during this time. And Mayor Horvath, this is how much of this work is rooted in personal experience. So thank you so much for sharing. And before I turn over to talk to my friend Tara Roth from the Goldhirsh Foundation, for all of our friends watching, please in the Q&A or in the chat, put your questions in. The only request is that the questions have to end in a question mark. So like we want to answer questions, so they have to end in a question mark, and we'll do our best to get through all of them. And with that, Tara, my question for you is, well, first, thank you for your leadership as one of the seed funders to the Stockton pilot all these years ago. And my question is, why did you and your foundation make the choice at the time, a radical choice back then, to support this idea before most people even heard about it, A? And B, how can people watching who aren't mayors, who aren't foundations, how can they support sort of this movement?
Well, thank you all so much. It is really such an honor to be in this discussion today and to see the variety of the pilots that have emerged and how you're all so unified by this commitment to community and economic security. So we supported this work for a few reasons. At the Goldhirsh Foundation, we connect the dots between some of the best emerging innovations and the financial, social, and human capital to make them thrive. So simply put, we find smart people like Mayor Tubbs doing creative things, and then we give them the tools to do those things better. We've done a lot of work around initiatives to increase economic empowerment and access to capital for all. But frankly, the changes that we were trying to address weren't happening broadly or quickly enough. So in 2016, we provided seed funding to help launch the Economic Security Project, which became the incubating organization of Mayor Tubbs's pilot, the Stockton Economic Empowerment Demonstration. And you're right, even though it was just a few short years ago, back then, guaranteed income wasn't in the mainstream dialogue. It wasn't something that people were talking about. And Mayor Tubbs wanted to change that. And he did that in Stockton. And now with MGI, he and all of you are taking this really important cause national. So when we get a federal guaranteed income, it will be because of what you started, Mayor Tubbs, in Northern California, and what we are so proud to be a part of, and just to see these ripple effects. And then your other question was, what can people watching do to get involved? I will speak from a funder's perspective and also just a community citizen's perspective. We can all invest in the work of MGI, especially around narrative change efforts that will highlight the lived experiences of economic insecurity. And we can do this with all forms of capital at our disposal, whether it's financial or human or social. So for instance, your pilot in Stockton really influenced the national conversation by providing a proof of concept locally, and also by testing this heretofore radical notion that people understand best their own basic financial needs. We have seen that notion is not radical, and maybe it was, but it has now become far more accepted. And so collectively, we have to continue to trust in and support and promote that notion together.
Thank you so much, Tara. Before we go to Q&A, let me just shout out, I see her in the chat, Natalie Foster, who's the co-chair and president of the Economic Security Project, which is sort of a national organization doing so much work, not just on pilots, but on policy and research and thought leadership around sort of cash transfers, guaranteed income, and anti-monopoly work. It was actually a conversation with her that led to the seed pilot, and they were in addition to the Goldhirsh Foundation and others, the main funders for the Stockton pilot. So Natalie, thank you for your leadership. Looking forward to hearing from you later today. And thank you to the Economic Security Project. So mayors, before I turn over for Q&A, could you all each answer this question in terms of, if I'm not a mayor, if I'm not a funder, what can I do to kind of get guaranteed income to become a reality as a policy? And I'll start with you, Mayor Horvath.
So go to your mayors, go to your city council, and bring all of your friends and have everyone tell them exactly what it is you all believe and why you need this program in your community, and why this should exist for everyone. All of the proof is already there, and all of the pilots that we're doing that target different populations are going to show, specific results. But the aggregate is just already affirming a narrative we already know, which is this works, and this is what must happen in our community. So yeah, I would say lobby your local government and amplify the voices that are happening with mayors for guaranteed income around the country.
What say you, Mayor Garcia?
Yeah, I think what Lindsey said is absolutely right. I also think that a lot of folks that are involved in this movement have different types of roles, and I think that folks that can be an advocate for guaranteed income, whether you are an elected official, whether you are an academic, there's a lot of work happening in academic spaces, educators, teachers that are talking about guaranteed income now more in their classrooms, that are sharing with colleagues, that are doing research. There's graduate students that are launching research projects on guaranteed income. So I think the education space is a really interesting piece. And also in the nonprofit world, I think whether you are directly involved in food security, whether you're doing childcare, whether you're someone that's involved in just helping folks that in neighborhoods that are economically distressed. We all have a role in being able to kind of advocate for a dedicated source of income for these folks that you are helping. So I think in the nonprofit sector, in the education sector, in the government sector, I think there's natural places where you can advocate. If you belong to none of those spaces, but you just are kind of a fan or a supporter of this work, I think amplifying the work on social media, continuing to press those in positions to make a difference, also I think really matters.
And Mayor Brown?
Yes, I agree with all that has been said. And I think we are just really powerful advocates when we are informed. And there's so much work happening. There are toolkits that are available now. The Jane Family Foundation Institute, they just released a toolkit about a month ago that's very helpful. But there are so many myths around guaranteed income. And the more that we can put facts to fiction and really get a broader understanding, even at the ground level, I think we'll see more support, not only from the top down, but also from the ground up. And that's really what it's going to take. As Mayor Horvath said, contacting your local city council, your mayors, making sure that they're involved in the work. But then also just having conversations with people that just really helps, because in conversations I've had of just community at the community level, many people are just uninformed about what guaranteed income is. And so it's really easy to correct a lot of the misnarrative, and also to help garner additional support. And then again, access those toolkits that are now available that really provide you with the information you need to help be an ambassador.
And now we're going to go to the audience Q&A. First question is, and any of you all, whoever wants this can take this one. What have been the most effective arguments, or what would be an effective argument in recruiting mayors to join Mayors for Guaranteed Income?
And I'll jump in. I think the most effective argument is looking at what the pilots that have launched and their successes. I think that Mayor Tubbs has grown the group from kind of like the one initial demonstration to getting folks who wanted to launch pilot. There are now many active pilots across the country, and so I think sharing those results with other mayors is really the best way. The thing about mayors also is we all talk a lot to each other. We have our own groups, Mayors U.S. Conference of Mayors, and so I think that we're also willing to reach out to other mayors and our colleagues across the country and have conversations with them as well. And so I think it's something we're all active in doing.
I think also for people who are really going to get into the conversation about where's the money going to come from, I think what we can say is it's already there. We're going to spend money taking care of people who are in poverty, who are struggling, who are, facing, unimaginable challenges right now, one way or another. So why don't we invest that money in uplifting people, supporting people, and getting people out of poverty, getting people into, a different place where we're not just kind of continuing to invest in the cycle of poverty and really help uplift people. So I think that's something I usually hear as, a barrier. Where's the money going to come from? And, it's already there. We're already spending it. So why don't we take care of people instead?
Agreed. And I think there's such an opportunity to really focus on a bipartisan movement. Mayor Tubbs was very intentional with really recruiting Democrats and Republicans to be a part of this work. And I think that that's going to be essential for seeing a national guaranteed income at the federal level. And so I think we have the responsibility to really reach out across the aisles and just ensure that we really hone the mission on poverty elimination, because if we can all agree that we want to lift the third of Americans that are in poverty, and it doesn't matter if they're Democrats or Republican across this nation, then we need to unify on strategies that actually work. And the way government has addressed poverty in the past just has not been effective. The data is there. And so providing direct cash to people, they know what they need. They know how to spend on their basic necessities. And the work has continued to compile, and we look forward to adding to that body of work that people know how to take care of themselves, especially when given the resources to do so.
The next question we have is from Catherine with the Sacramento Bee. And she's looking at kind of a state UBI program from Senator Cortese, a good friend, around a UBI pilot at the state level for those leaving the foster care system. And she was curious as to what did you all think about programs that target specific at-risk communities? And do you guys see smaller pilots like this opening the door for future programs that reach more Californians, or reach every Californian, or reach every Californian that needs it? Anyone could just jump in on that one.
Yeah, that's what we're doing in West Hollywood. And I think that's what different communities are doing throughout the country, so we can understand direct impacts on different communities. Ours is focused on LGBT and older adults. And so, and we know that a legacy of discrimination has impacted the circumstances many LGBT older adults are facing today. So, that's one way we'll be able to get some specific data to talk about a population that exists in places other than West Hollywood. And obviously, when we're speaking about a federal level, those kinds of talking points and understanding of specific impact on community will allow us information that we can share with elected officials throughout the country. This is how it will directly impact your personal constituents. So having an understanding of different populations actually will allow us to have a broader conversation.
Anyone else on that one? Or
No, I mean, I agree with Lindsay. I'll just add that I think the whole point of the pilot is for them to be different. So I think in Long Beach, we were intentional in trying to do something that other folks weren't doing, which is essentially, single moms in one concentrated neighborhood. So I think the strength of the group is to have different pilots to learn, and then to be able to use that to make a national case.
Go ahead, Mayor Brown.
And I just think briefly that really the nuanced kind of very intentional targeting of populations that have the greatest need is really what guaranteed income is all about. And that's the big difference between universal basic income, which targets everyone.
Next question is from Catherine about and I'll just take this one quickly. How is MGI reaching out to mayors, city managers of smaller cities? I know that U.S. Conference of Mayors for mayors of cities larger than 30K people. Would love to see some MGI coalition members in smaller rural communities. Catherine, we would love to see that too. Mayors for Guaranteed Income seems like a big operation. It's literally 5 people who are providing technical assistance, doing messaging, writing questions. It's a lot. So we definitely need your help. And to the previous question about having help, if you have a community, if you have a mayor, if you have a city manager, have them send an email to info@mayorsforgi.org. We'd love to onboard them and get them on. We just don't have the capacity to reach out to every single city in this country, but we do understand that we need everyone to kind of push with us to make this policy a reality. To the previous question from the SAC-B reporter, yes, we know we have to start somewhere. So starting with foster kids or older folks, LGBT people, that makes sense as a starting point, because we're mayors, we're pragmatists. So we understand if we can't do everything, that's not an excuse to do nothing. But while doing something, we're going to push to where we could get to a place where we get to scale. And that's why we're also pushing on the federal government, to the question in the chat about the lever that we'll have to do it, to the federal government to make this a policy. And that's why that child tax credit is so important as a starting point. And yes, it's not going to get to everyone, but it'll get to every family making 75K or less, which is a whole lot of families, and get us a huge step from where we are today, or yesterday, where there was no one, right? And then I think that win is important to keep in mind. And Dylan, I think I answered your question about how can a city fund their own universal basic income. I think most mayors are probably united in that cities can't fund universal basic incomes. We can pilot, but it has to come out the federal government. And it's because cities can't deficit spend. We're not allowed to borrow money and not balance our budgets at the end of the year constitutionally. Like, we have to make sure that we have all the ducks in a row. So if cities did nothing else, no police, no fire, no parks, no rec, we might be able to do a guaranteed income for some folks, but it has to be a federal program like the other entitlement programs. And then we have a question from our friend Lewis in the UK. Apparently in Wales, they just announced their first pilot. Shout out to Wales. And the question is, they're thinking about sort of what it might look like and how they can learn from the work that's being done with the pilots you all are running or starting to run. So could you let folks know either how to get the information on your particular pilot? I know, Mayor Brown, you mentioned some of the toolkits are out. And can you also share what you've learned? So let's start there. What have you guys learned in terms of pilots, or what are you hoping to learn in terms of the pilots you guys are going to launch that may be helpful to our friends across the pond? And I'll start with you, Mayor Brown, because you've been launching and piloting and learning and teaching for the past 8 months. Or longer than that, right? It's been like 10 months.
Yes, time is flying by. I think it's really helpful to really understand and define the population that you want to help, because that ultimately will help you craft your narrative for funders that may be interested in supporting. Obviously, different organizations or institutions have different constituencies that they're most interested in. And then also thinking about what you want to measure. What are you hoping to learn from your pilot? We're very intentional on not assuming what the outcomes are going to be. So really to be open-minded and to give room for the data, and also thinking about utility, how you plan to reach people, how you plan to really accomplish your data goals, and then thinking about really, it was essential for us to have a research partner. Big thank you to the Jane Family Institute for really stepping in and helping us to really formulate our pilot, as well as with MGI, which they provided our first infusion of funding to help fund a program director, which was very essential. So just ensuring that you have the basic tools. So you definitely need someone that's going to be your pilot, so your program director. And then you also need your research institution that will help you craft and really help realize your goals of what you plan to measure. And then start thinking about messaging so that you can be really strong on your fundraising in order to make everything work.
And then we have a question that says, what do you think are the biggest political challenges to doing a guaranteed income, and how do we overcome them?
I mean, I'll answer that. I think the biggest challenge is folks not really understanding what it is. I think that's why, I mean, events like today and just getting pilots being launched across the country are really important. But I think, Mayor Tubbs, you shared kind of some of where the polling is at. And I think that the perception has shifted. A majority of Americans support guaranteed income programs. I mean, a substantial amount of Democrats, many more Republicans do than a few years ago. So I think that the argument is winning that these programs work. So I think, folks need to also be pointed to successful programs and the results.
And I'm sorry about that. I was trying to when you mentioned the polling, Robert, I was like, make sure Data for Progress tweets that poll. That's some good stuff in there. Mayor Brown, I didn't get a chance to tell you, but we did some polling with Data for Progress, and it shows that the majority of voters are supportive of guaranteed income. 55% of all likely voters, even 33% of Republicans, 80% of Black folks, 75% of Latino folks, all are like, we need a guaranteed income policy. And the pendulum has swung, because when we started Marriage for Guaranteed Income a year ago, only 44% of people supported guaranteed income. So thanks to everyone's leadership, we're advancing it and moving forward. There's a question about sort of, I see a lot of pilots are struggling with the federal rules for benefit programs, that their states can't waive income and asset guidelines. such that provide these cash transfers can cause recipients to lose other benefits. How are you dealing with this? Is there legislation? So I'll go ahead and take the first stab at it. And Mayors, you can, and then Suki, I may have you jump in as well. I haven't seen a lot of pilots struggling, and I wouldn't use that word, but I do know that many of the pilots have gotten waivers from, in California, all the California pilots have gotten waivers from state governments, and we're currently in conversations now with the federal government about waivers, and there's some bills working their way through the lawmaking process at the federal level. And we also, all the pilots do benefits counseling, so everyone's able to sit down with a benefits counselor to look at sort of how the guaranteed income may or may not affect their eligibility for some of the requirements, and everyone make decisions that way. And I think to your question, Catherine, that's what highlights the need for a policy, because the reason why we're getting all these waivers and we jump through all these hoops is because we're still doing pilots and not policy. But once we get to a policy, we'll be able to alleviate all those concerns. And I think there's another question about sort of should those who receive benefits also receive a guaranteed income. But I think every mayor and Mayors for Guaranteed Income is unified unanimously on the point that we don't think this should replace the existing social safety net. We think it should be additive. We don't think just because you receive a housing voucher or you receive food vouchers that then we should take that away to give you something that someone else who receives none of that also gets. Like, we want to be additive and really disrupt and break the cycle of poverty. So I know that was a lot really quickly. And Maris, do you have anything you wanted to add to sort of those sort of questions about A, should we replace existing benefits, or B, how are you guys working to make sure that folks aren't kicked off their benefits by participating in these programs?
Well, on the first part of that, I would just say, and also I guess to the previous question, like, I don't know anybody who's going to survive politically if they're going to talk about taking away somebody's Social Security, or, we're going to get rid of weekends. It's just not going to happen. So, I think that's the direction we're heading with guaranteed income, is making sure that, this way of taking care of people continues to exist on top of what already exists in our country and in our communities. So.
I would just add that we definitely pursued the waivers at the very beginning. That was one of the primary concerns, because we knew the segment of population that we were targeting, and we didn't want to offset their existing benefits. So we worked on that at the very onset of our program in order to ensure people would still be able to receive their vital resources.
And Jonathan is a social work master's student in Sacramento. His master's thesis is actually on guaranteed income, but he hasn't yet decided which aspects of guaranteed income to research. So it's a two-part question. A, do any of your pilots need a motivated intern to kind of help do this important work? And B, sort of what questions about guaranteed income do you all have that his master's thesis could be helpful in?
I would just say our particular pilot, we're in the stage where we're kind of on autopilot, but I will check back with our team. If you'd like to just email me, I'll put my email in the chat, and we can figure out if we could utilize your services on our pilot.
Yeah, I would also just add that I think that our pilot is also being kind of managed by the university, by Cal State Long Beach and the Department of Economic Research on campus. So they have their research component is pretty locked in, and they are actually going to be working with graduate students at the university. So I would just encourage also, just with my own educator hat on, that I'm sure that there are a lot of pilots that still need support, and maybe we can connect folks also through the MGI group with research needs, that particularly some smaller cities that might not have access to a university, or might have not access to something like an academic team to connect you with some of those folks, because I know that there's a lot of pilots that still need that academic component as part of their study.
And in our city, we'll have benefits counselors available to work with our community members. So as we know, everybody kind of has an individual circumstance or different things that they're mindful of in their matrix of support. And so we'll have people in our community who are able to assist residents.
I think we have time for one more question. And the question is from an anonymous attendee. And the question is, I see all the things that are wrong. I can't sit around and do nothing. What advice do you guys have on how to build, like how to do something? How do you build a grassroots movement? Like how does someone become part of something in their local communities to kind of see whether it's guaranteed income or other changes that need to happen?
I would just say that you're already doing it just by participating in this. I mean, I think that being informed and then taking that information and sharing it with as many people as you can or that you're comfortable with and whatever platforms you're able to do it makes an impact. And policymakers, through social media or through feedback, that impacts us and our decisions that we make. Hearing, believe it or not, I'm a big believer that folks that they make public comments at meetings or that leave comments in social media posts or that engage or write emails, that does actually make a difference. And just having a voice and getting involved in something, I think, really matters.
So with that, mayors, do you have any last words? I just want to again publicly thank you all for your leadership, your courage, your insights, your fearlessness, and your love for people and humanity, and you're willing to push back against sort of a failing status quo, which still has a lot of supporters, which still has a lot of believers, and saying no, we can be different. And looking forward to seeing the results of your pilots and continuing to support your all leadership. And I also want to give a special thank you to Mayor Brown, who, as I mentioned, just completed her term of service. 8 years as mayor in the city of Compton, served well and diligently, and looking forward to seeing whatever it is or all that she does after she's done being mayor. And also thank you for you all watching, that there's ways to be involved. This is just not about mayors, it's about communities, it's about people, it's about all of us. And we need everyone. Many hands make light work. We need everyone to put their hand to the plow and help us push, because we're pushing against 400 years of a failed economic experiment. I would argue that is this country. And we have to make it better. And we have to get rid of poverty, and the guaranteed income is a way to do that. So with that, mayors, any last comments or words? And if not, we'll just adjourn. Or Tara, I'm sorry, I forgot. I forgot you weren't a mayor. You up here with us. Well, Robert said we're leaving. All right. Well, thank you guys. Talk soon.